Hello, here we are. Episode number 4. Website reviews. My name is Joe Hinckley. I own Way to Go website, waytogowebsite.com. This is Chase Graham. He's a graphic designer and my friend.
Hello again.
Hi, Chase. I put on this, I always try to look fancy for these videos, so I put on this short sleeve button up. Very fancy. Chase was showing a little bit too much skin earlier, so he added a button.
I had to button it up a little bit.
I feel like I've added one too many buttons to mine.
I think you're suffocating.
I
I think
gotta,
you should,
yeah, I gotta relax a little bit.
yeah, you know what? You need blood flow.
Yeah. So by the way, Chase, I've already started sharing the website on this. I've ditched the split screen to start
Okay.
this video, so we're already looking at it, and I think this website. I was telling Chase earlier, it's a bit of a puzzle. This website, it's a little bit challenging. It's a little bit more complicated in structure than our past 3 episodes that we've done. A lot of times you'll find websites that are focused on one main service or have one main product or goal that they are after. This one has multiple services. This pet gal, pet sitting, dog walking, and you can see up here under services, wedding pet attendant, which I guess we might talk about a little bit, although we're not going to focus on that page so much. And then pet taxi. So the issue with this is that when you work on your homepage, a lot of times in the StoryBrand framework, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but in the StoryBrand framework, you talk about the benefits of what you do. But when you do 4 things, it can be hard to encapsulate and summarize all those things into one page. So like in the case of Way to Go website, we do a few things, but the main thing we do is custom websites. So on the homepage, we can basically talk about custom websites and then mention, oh yeah, we also do websites for podcasts. They have a little bit of that going on, like wedding pet attendant and pet taxi are definitely secondary services, but their pet sitting and dog walking appear to be equal. As you can see here in this, on their homepage, they talk immediately about pet sitting and dog walking in the same sentence. So we've come up with a strategy for how to go about this in a way that we think makes the most sense. Of course, when you start incorporating all these things, there's a bunch of ways you can look at it and do it, but we'll talk a little bit about why we would do it the way we've described. And I think, by the way, Chase, all right, never mind. I was going to say we didn't talk a lot about graphic design on this, but I'm sure we'll have plenty to say as we go. Through
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Much of the design on this side is pretty good, but there's a lot of little inconsistencies, but
Yeah.
that you see throughout different text sizes, different text properties, different format. There's just kind of a lot going on, but just overall, I think the colors and stuff they're really neat. There needs to be more of a sort of a guide or more of a foundation across all of these pages and sections.
Yeah.
Uh,
Generally, it does a fine job communicating. I mean, there's definitely some rules they're breaking. One thing we'll see, like you can probably see right now, or just saw in this header, you'll see text that you can't necessarily read because it's on a white background, or the part of the image is so bright that you can't really read the white text. There, it's not so bad, but on some of the other ones, it's a little bit worse. So. Okay, well let's start by talking about that header. I think,
yeah,
and I'd like to talk about the usability factor of it,
or lack thereof.
or lack thereof. So sliders, they've been around for a long time, and they're kind of a cool, or have been thought of as like a cool effect. And I think that, in my own opinion, and then just my own theory, is I think that's a carryover from when the web was a much simpler place where you couldn't do so much. And I think sliders were thought of as like, look at this cool motion animation interactive thing. And it was thought of as like, this is like a centerpiece and a cool thing to show how cutting edge you are. But those days it's not impressive anymore. It's on every website. And now actually, sliders are generally considered, almost universally considered, to be a bad idea. You can see a little bit of that here in that here are these 3 quotes, and now they're gone, and now you can't read them anymore. So if you want to watch them or read those again, you have to wait for it to come all the way around. And as we've talked about in the past, people will not give you a lot of time on your website. In this header section, they'll give you about 15 seconds, and then they'll leave if they don't figure it out. If they don't figure out what you're doing or how you can benefit them, or how this website might benefit them. There's this article that's written on Yoast website, which is a very famous SEO plugin for WordPress, but just generally a very famous SEO company. And they have this popular page that's sliders suck and should be banned from your website. And it's basically references a study. Maybe I can find. So it references a study that said only 1% of people actually click on a slider. Sliders confuse people. So this is all, and then links out to a study that was done on sliders. People simply ignore your sliders. So you can, and then they link to this website here. Should I use a carousel.com carousel slider? Essentially the same thing. So this kind of illustrates even more so the problem with the Pet Gal. By the way, we didn't say the name of the website. The Pet Gal is the website we're reviewing today. The Pet Gal issue is that you start reading this, carousels are effective at it, being able to tell people in market, and it's gone. And then people will just go, okay, forget it. I'm not going to bother just having to page back through each one of these, and then read it, and then page back, and then it's gone again. It's not a very satisfying user experience. So, I have a couple exceptions personally for when I use a slider or when I think it's okay to use a slider. Pure images, just images. If you have a section on your website where you would otherwise just use one image, but for whatever reason you want to use 2 or 3 images, I think that is acceptable because you can still have that image there, but then if people want to page through to more, they can. Honestly, if you care about people viewing those images, it's more likely that they would scroll down, and then you could list those images down or list them out in a grid, and that might be better. But for whatever reason, if you need a slider in that situation, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. Never, though, should it be timed, I don't think. Just because if you miss something or you want to see something, then you're forcing them to have to page back. It's just not a great user experience. The other situation,
and even if it was timed, you'd have to have like the same amount of content on each slide. Otherwise, you'd have to time,
right,
each piece of content for people to view on average longer.
Right.
So which is ridiculous. And then also, like, people read at different speeds.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody's not totally paying attention to a website, so you're giving someone like an automated user experience that people often just avoid and they don't like to see on a website. It's kind of annoying to look at.
Reading.
That's kind of the issue with this header.
That's definitely the case with reading, but it can be the case with images as well. Like maybe people want to look closer at an image, or like, oh, did you see that? And then now it's gone. If they're sitting next to somebody at the computer, like, oh, did you see that? And then it's like, oh, all right, never mind. So that's still the case. But then so never timed, I don't think. And then the other thing would be reviews or testimonials. If you have 3 testimonials, if you have a testimonial section on your website, and it's not a slider, then you probably show 3, 4, maybe 6 testimonials. If you then want to have a slider, you still see 3 or 4 testimonials, but then you just have the page to see more. So basically the same amount of information is surfaced and available to view on the website, but you're just giving people the option to view more. And the nice thing about a slider with testimonials, or what could be a nice thing about a testimonial slider, is that it shows we have a lot of these reviews. We have a lot of good reviews. So even if they don't read it, just the fact that they're going and paging through, like, oh, wow, they have 4 pages of good reviews, sends the message of this is a trustworthy, credible place. So those are my exceptions. Photos, testimonials. You'll see they do testimonials here, but it's timed, which just makes it harder because some people aren't going to be able to read through that fast enough. Or if they want like, oh, come look at this, like that just happened. I was like, oh, come look at it, and it's already gone, and then we're both sitting here waiting. It's just people just don't have the patience for that, and they're just going to keep scrolling. They're just going to go, okay, all right, That's great. So it's great that they have these. Great that they have reviews, but there's a section for that in StoryBrand, the proof section. So we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, I just went on a long-winded rant there. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Chase, or should we just keep going?
No, I think what you said is a good introduction to talking about most of the content that's going to be on this site.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
do you want me to talk a little bit? We didn't really talk about this header specifically.
Okay, yeah, you can talk.
Yeah, if you want to scroll up back to the top.
Yep.
This header, like Joe mentioned, there's testimonials, but by the time you're done seeing any of the testimonies, they've disappeared. They've gone on another page. I mean, this is really disorienting because you have content that is appearing on top of this image, but then the image is also scrolling. So there's too many different things happening that I think maybe to some extent that you could do this on a site, but it would have to be slowed down greatly. You wouldn't have this many elements that are popping up all on the screen. It's a little bit weird how all of these images that you see like collect in the corner of this screen when they could be like spread all the way around. So there's sort of a problem with how the elements are displaced on this if it were to be effective anyway. But
yeah, generally they're suffering from just some maybe poor decisions when design as far as design goes. Like this image is a little bit pixelated, not necessarily a great image to use full screen. It's having to stretch to work, and then as I was talking about a little bit earlier, the contrast with the white text on some of these images is not good. Chase mentioned having those Polaroid pictures show up are not a great use of space. Generally just has kind of an outdated feel to it, and maybe just not a great. Some of these images don't portray high quality, in that they're very low res images or very stock image looking, very fake looking. So
yeah, it would just be easier, and it would just be better for people visiting this site if it just said, like what some of these titles of it said. It's like client recommended pet sitting or something for the static heading that would just be sitting there. Static meaning it's not moving. Mm-hmm. And then a subheading underneath it that has to do with the customer visiting this business instead of all of this just assets thrown everywhere.
So that's where we think that this section right here could be repurposed as a great heading, where you would just have a static image up top, pick a good image, a high res image that actually spans the full width without pixelating. And then here's a great or a fine heading right here. So you don't need to say PetGal again. You have your logo here, and hopefully people see the petgal.com and all of that. So you just say pet sitting and dog walking. And then if we cheat and we go ahead a little bit in this paragraph, things that we can use out of this. Guilt free. So that's a great selling point and a great unique identifier and a benefit immediately. It says what you do and what's great about it. So guilt free pet sitting and dog walking. So then you could immediately use this as a subhead of PetGal is the top rated, most trusted and caring professional pet care provider in town. Then I think you could use this next sentence. All of our pet sitters and dog walkers are animal lovers first, so all your visits come with loads of love and personalized attention. And then you could tease your services with like a little sideways list or something with check marks where it's like pet sitting, dog walking, wedding pet attendant, pet taxi. And then you've summarized everything very quickly, and you've as we've talked about a million times, or not a million times, 3 times in the last few videos, is you got what do you offer, how will it make your visitors or the person viewing your website, how will it make their life better, and how can you get it. So just by using this section right here and repurposing a little bit, you've been very clear about what you offer and what's great about it. What's missing at this point is call to action, which is a little bit inconsistent throughout the site. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that's the call to action is where things start to get confusing with this site. So as I was talking about before, usually you have like kind of one set service or one main service, but in this case, they're splitting the service. So that complicates the call to action a little bit. you can see here they finally have an appearance of their call to action button, which is get started, which goes to a form where basically you can pick your service, essentially. So that's going to be the main call to action. So the way that we're looking at this, and maybe I should explain why in this particular case this gets a little bit complicated. So we're not able to cover a lot of important information about these services all on one page, like the pricing, for example. In a lot of situations, you would be able to cover, because the pricing for dog sitting and the pricing for dog walking are different. But usually you would be able to cover that because you would just say, this is how much dog sitting is, this is how much dog walking is, and that would be it. But in this particular case, if you go to one of these pages, so the pet sitting page, you'll see that they have 4 or 3 different price points. So you can't really, and then if you go to dog walking, I believe there's 2. I may be wrong about that. There's 2 price points. So to be able to encapsulate, this has 3 price points and this has 2 price points all on one page, is a bit of a challenge. So in most cases, you would be able to just have this all listed on the page, or you would have a pricing page and people could go figure it out. But people need to know this information before they hit get started, most likely. It's unlikely that people are just going to go, oh yeah, and then they hit get started, and then they start without ever, checking what the price is going to be. So that complicates the whole call to action part of the website. So your call to action, I think, can still be get started, where people then can go and choose the services, but there needs to be a way for people to get to these individual service pages where they can then check the price. So you're going to have to split time a little bit, where maybe in the header you have a get started that goes to that form, but then throughout the website you're going to have to split things up a little bit so people can make sure that they cover that piece of information that they'll most likely need before getting to that form. Does that make sense, Chase? Did I do an okay job explaining that?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just have too much going on for their services. So either, I think they should simplify. I mean, this would just be advice for the business regardless of the website, that they should really simplify their pricing structure. Because if somebody wants to, for instance, go and get pet sitting, and then they look through and there's 3 different sections of all this information that you have to consider for pricing, it's going to be a lot less likely that people sign up for your service if they got to read all this and know all this minutia just to get somebody to take care of your dog. I mean, it doesn't seem like that complex of a activity, just having somebody come over and look after your dog. There shouldn't be all this complexity that follows it. So I think great if you revise that, then maybe you can include a lot of that information that then be included on the homepage. Because if you want to offer these 4 different services, all this just needs to be simplified, because you can't fit all this on the homepage. And even if you even just took like pop in for $25 visit, like in that section, you're almost leading people astray, because then there's all this more information that they need to know when they sign up for the service. Like that's a tiny part of all these other sections. So there's not really an easy way to communicate this when there's just so much information.
Right. So basically the way that Chase and I have decided to tackle this is push towards get started, which is your main form. As you can see here, they're using it here. Maybe that would help to get a little view of that. Where then you would say, I'm interested in, and then you would pick your service. But it's unlikely that someone's going to go to the homepage, see get started, and hit get started, and then it's going to dog walking, and they're never going to check the price. So we need to be able to provide some way for them to get all the more detailed information about that service. So the call to action then becomes a little bit murkier, which is not great. Like Chase saying, you're going to be better suited if you're better off if you just simplify everything, because it makes things way more clear and easy to comprehend and easy to use for people. But in this case, it's going to have to get a little bit muddy, and sometimes get started. Sometimes you're going to have to push people to educate themselves a little bit on the pricing. So that's what really makes this website a little bit more challenging, a little bit more of a puzzle. But let's just go on, I think, and maybe talk a little bit more about how they can use the homepage to not be too generic, or so let me back up just a little bit maybe. So a couple of options that you could go with is that you just leave everything independently to its service page. So we don't talk about dog walking, and we don't talk about dog sitting, and we don't talk about wedding pet attendant, and we don't talk about all this stuff on the homepage. We have individual pages for all of that. Problem with that is, so you would have individual pages for all that, and then you would have almost nothing on the homepage. Problem with that is your homepage is your most popular page. That's where everybody goes. So you're missing a big opportunity if you don't talk about your core services on your homepage, or at least your main services, not necessarily all your services, but your most important ones. So I think that's where you have to pick a focus on your homepage, and essentially when you do that, you're picking a focus for your business. It appears that this website has done that, or PetGal has done this when they've said pet sitting and dog walking. That appears to be their number one or number 1 and 2 services, and then we can assume that wedding attendant and pet taxi are secondary. So I think the way that Chase and I would recommend going about this is that use your homepage to express the benefits and talk about pet sitting and dog walking, but you have to do it in a way that applies to both. So you can talk about more so the broad appeal of your business, which we can get into in a second, and then wedding attendant and pet taxi are secondary, and maybe on the homepage as you're scrolling down, you have call to action rows that says, do you have a wedding coming up? Do you need someone to take care of your dog? And then they would say like, find out about our wedding attendant service or something like that. And then same thing with pet taxi is, do you need someone to transport your dog to something, or whatever it is. But those are secondary services, and they don't take focus on the homepage. They're just mentioned on the homepage. So, man, this is a lot to explain, isn't it, Chase?
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, and I'll say that we're going to eventually get to this point later on in the other sections, but I think it's probably good that we introduce it. The reason why you start with a main service, which in this case we're going to do pet sitting and dog walking, and introduce those 2 other services later, is because the other sections of your site that we recommend that you have, like the value section and the process section, it's confusing if you bring up, for instance, the values of what are you getting out of coming to this business or getting this service. It's confusing if you just talk about one of the services that you include when you mention all these 4 other services. So it's best that, like we were thinking, that you actually remove the process section on this homepage. Because you offer so many different services, the process is probably going to be varied whether or not you go for the wedding service or you go for the dog sitting service. And if you want to include all the information in your process section, then it just becomes bloated. The same issue that we were having, including all that information from the services pages. So separating it out and having a primary focus goes along with your other sections. Everything should sort of work well into each other. And so for the value section and for the process section, it's important that you just focus on 1 or 2 different things that your business does and then mention those other 2 later. And especially if I imagine that pet sitting and dog walking is more popular than the other services. Maybe it's 25% all across the board, but that's another issue of your business. If you're doing 4 different things all the time, that probably would be really stressful.
Right.
But I think for the time being, this site needs to have a better focus on clearly communicating like what people should be doing, because otherwise they just see those 4 services and they have to go to all these separate pages to find all these long details about those individual services, which isn't good either. So we're kind of trying to come up with the best of that we can, when in reality I think just overall the business needs to be a little bit simplified in terms of how you communicate.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's a good quote that I've heard, especially in business, when it comes to this, but I can't think of it now, so I'll think of another one, which is that I've heard and I think about a lot, is a point in every direction is the same as no point at all. So just having all this, doing all this stuff, it dilutes your value, and it makes things more confusing. So, and I think that's just generally true in business, but especially in websites. Picking a focus makes things clearer. So we're just going to go with a little bit of ideally it's one thing, but we're gonna compromise a little bit and just go with pet sitting and dog walking, because that's clearly what they've chosen here. Okay, so first section that you would normally get into after the header, man. Do you think we're gonna hit our hour mark on this one, Chase? We've been so good about hitting an hour every episode, but we'll do our best. Okay, so first section that you get into after the header is the problem section. So we're gonna, like we said, it's summarizing two different services. So if you were gonna do a problem section for each of these services individually, they would probably be different from each other. Pet sitting would have to do with the problem of, you're going on vacation and you don't want to bother your neighbor or whatever. And then dog walking would be, you're stuck at work and you don't want to have to worry about rushing home to walk your dog, or you're concerned that your dog is going to be unhappy because it doesn't get enough exercise or whatever it is. So we're going to have to just be more general about it and kind of talk about the quality of care that they provide, so that this place is a higher quality and more considerate and more affectionate towards your pet than any other place might be. So, and then on the separate services page, you could go into more specific detail about why or what the problem is and what that particular service solves. But we're going to have to talk more generally on the homepage.
The problem section is one that I forgot. You see, the value section,
yeah, it goes
the process section, and then also the problem section all sort of goes into the service. That's another.
Right.
That's one that I forgot to mention, but
you have the notes, Chase. What did we have for the problem section? I have the notes too. I should look at them.
So you wanted, we were thinking that you.
So yeah, we talk about the quality of care basically. So we can, as they mentioned in the header here in this first paragraph, is all of our pet sitters and dog walkers are animal lovers first. So the angle they could go with is that other places are just businesses and they're more cold, and they're not necessarily looking after for your pet's best interest as much as they are just looking out for making a profit. So you could say something like, other places don't love your dog like we do, or something like that. And then in the body they could say, when most pet sitters and dog walkers look at your pets, all they see is dollar signs, but our pet sitters and dog walkers are animal lovers, and you can go into that angle. So that solves the problem of the concern that the owner might have, is like, oh, I'm being cruel to my pet by just sending them off to this place where they're going to be in a chain link fence, or they're going to be with a dog walker that's walking 50 other dogs, and they don't actually care or give personal attention to my dog. And as we were talking about in the header, their whole concept that they use is guilt-free pet sitting and dog walking. So you can just kind of tap into that angle, which is a good angle, but it's just less specific about the actual individual services and the problems that those services solve. But generally, it highlights the difference and makes your business stand out as animal lovers. And then at that point, you would need to do, typically you would reaffirm the call to action, the main call to action of get started. But as we were talking about, you need to be able to redirect in these different angles so people can then see how much is dog walking, how much is dog sitting or pet sitting. So then you would have, instead of a get started button, you would probably do two buttons, which would be dog walker pricing, pet sitter pricing under that section. You think so, Chase?
Yeah, I noticed here they have get started underneath all these sections, and they also have a pricing. So we're looking at 2, 4, 6. We're looking at 10 buttons here, or 8 buttons here.
That's interesting that they don't make pricing the same size to get started. You don't even realize it's a button. I didn't even notice that.
I just realized that too. That's so interesting. So potentially for our structure, you could do the same thing. So you could have pet sitting and dog walking, and then check out our pricing for each of them, and then have a get started button underneath each of them, which I guess would work.
You could do that, but like we were saying before, you send people in too many directions and it starts to get a little bit confusing.
Yeah, then it gets really confusing.
So I think Chase and I were talking about this earlier. A common call to action button that people use is learn more. It's okay. It just doesn't beg anyone to click it. Learn more is pretty stale, pretty plain. It's non-descriptive. So I think if you want people to view that next page that they need to view, like in this case, the pet sitting page to view the pricing, get to the meat of why somebody wants to view that page, which is the pricing. People are most interested in, like, how much am I going to have to spend to do this? So if you say something like, pet sitting pricing as a button rather than learn more about pet sitting, you're probably going to get a lot more clicks and a lot more people coming over to that side or to that page. Okay, so then the next section would be the
Process, but we're skipping it.
Yeah. Well, typically you would go into the value. The process would come after the proof, but we are going to skip the process section eventually. But
Oh yeah.
but after the problem is the value. Chase, you want to cover the value section?
Yeah, so the current value section that they have on their site, or they have like these three sections: trusted, caring, professional, sweet, cute, loving, and then they have a section that goes to their blog underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the problem is, well, first of all, with the headings on each of these sections, trusted, caring, professional, that's good. I guess it communicates the value that you're then going to express in that body paragraph. But sweet, cute, loving, that's not. I mean, they're trying to be cute with the heading, but it doesn't really describe it. You don't really know what that means. You have to then read the paragraph beneath it. So it doesn't really clearly show what you offer. It's just sort of just three cute words, like live, laugh, love. It's just three cute words all put right next to each other. And so there's only two. So the best part about being a pet sitter and dog walker is getting to spend time with our pet clients. Like they're saying that we love pets, which maybe isn't like the strongest argument as to why you would go with one business over the other, but it works, I think, in this context.
Well, what you try and do with the value section is you want to be customer focused, not focused
Yeah.
on yourself as much. So it's nice to know that these are pet lovers, but you kind of cover that in the problem section, and you cover that in the header when you talk about that all your employees are pet lovers first. So it's better in your value section. It's all about the value that you add to the experience that your customer might not be expecting. Yeah, you get a dog sitter, but what does that mean? Like, how does that actually affect your life? So you want to be focused more so on the person viewing the website and the potential customer and what the value is for them.
So basically, their two values here are that we're trained professionals and we love dogs, we love animals. So you have to rephrase that in a way where you're not just talking about yourself, but you're talking about it in the perspective of the customer. So it's like, our trained professionals will take care of your dog. Our trained professionals, love your dog and we want to take care of your dog. You're not, you're clearly, explaining it in such a way as if you're the customer reading it. You're not just bragging about yourself. You got to stop talking about yourself and your business. You got to focus on the customer. But then Joe and I were thinking that, instead of covering these two different sections, you could add a third one and put it in a column, on one section of your website. So information is really consolidated. It's all in one place. You don't have to scroll and be confused that, like, for instance, the section below is actually about the blog, but it has the same format, as these two sections that are above, the sweet, caring, love, and trained professional section. So for our value section, we came up with 3 headlines and then maybe a little bit of description under each. Maybe you could have a little photo or an icon within each of those sections. So in one section, you'll have 3 columns, and you have one that's just called professional care. Your dog will be looked after by a trained professional, and maybe more information about maybe the sort of certification they go through or what sort of qualifications they have that make them trained. The second section would be you have a happier, healthier dog. If your dog is going on walks, if he's being taken care of someone where he's constantly getting physical activity, I would just have to guess that your dog is probably going to live longer. There's probably some statistic associated with that.
Yeah, Chase and I are assuming that there's some studies about that, and I think it's safe to say that there probably are. But you would of course back it up with real data.
So you have professional care, you have a happy, healthier dog, and you have no more worries. You're guilt-free, you're worry-free. You no longer have to schedule your day around your dog. You can leave the house not having to worry about your dog. You just go more into that. What's the benefit of hiring somebody to take after your dog? It's like, oh, well, you can leave the house and you don't have to worry about your dog ripping apart your couch or peeing everywhere, and you get somebody to look after it.
It simplifies your life. So
right, it simplifies your life.
So yeah, it's a very subtle twist. It's just like changing the camera angle a little bit, because they're essentially saying that in a way, like professional care, trusted caring professionals, but they're talking about the qualifications of the people, not necessarily saying like just being more direct about it. We're saying like these people are taking care of your dog. Like you can rest easy knowing that your dog will be taken care of by trusted professionals. So just having that focus, and that's a very common problem, is that a lot of websites immediately launch into themselves, and they immediately start talking about their history or the qualifications. And there's a place for qualifications, but that's more so reserved for, as we will talk about, is the proof section. I think that's actually next. But people need to know what's in it for them. They need to see the value that they're going to gain from it in order to be convinced. Okay. So yeah, next let's go into the proof. After that, good for them. They already have testimonials, but they're just in that header and they're going by on a slider that is too quick and not enough contrast, and you can't read it, and you have to wait for it to come back around if you want to try and read it again. So have a section right there, right underneath value, where you talk. Here's some quotes. It's nice to include pictures of the people that give the quotes. It makes it feel more real, like it's actually a genuine thing that you can see the person's face.
Then with their dog.
Then with their dog would be great. They have on this website. It's a little bit unconventional, but I think it serves the purpose of a proof section. They have this praise and smiles pages here. So smiles is just pictures of dogs or pets that they've taken care of. That communicates. You can use pictures of these people and then put quotes from the owners next to them. Would be a great way to do it. So that really just kind of reinforces, now that you've said you understand this problem, you're able to offer a solution. You've described the solution and what's great about it, and then you've talked about the value. Of course, you can just say all those things because you know the correct way to talk. But when you can show other people that are backing up what you're saying, it just enhances your credibility as a business. So that's a proof section is very important. And like I was saying, there's definitely a place for talking about your credentials and about you and why you should be trusted. They also mentioned things like master's degrees, veterinary technicians, dog trainers. This is stuff that you can. The more of this proof that you can include, the better. So you don't have to just limit it to one thing. It can be testimonials. It can be stats. It could be awards, certifications, any of this stuff that communicates that PetGal knows what they're talking about. Okay. Proof section. And then normally you would have the process section after that, but as we were discussing, the process section is going to be different for each one of their services, even between dog walking and pet sitting. So you're probably going to be better off leaving the process section for the individual pages for each service, so you don't confuse people. There's other things that, as I mentioned before, you would include on the header, especially on this website, where you would tease your secondary services. So the wedding attendant service, where you can bring your dog to a wedding, and then the pet taxi that drives your dog around or your pet around. So you could have call to actions on the homepage here, kind of beneath those things. As I was saying before, like, oh, do you have a wedding coming up? Do you need someone to take care of your dog? Learn about our wedding attendant service, or need someone to drive your dog to the park, or whatever it is. And then you can tease your have a call to action for your pet taxi service. Then the other thing that you include here is their blog. So how would you describe that image there, Jason, of that dog?
Well, I thought it looked like a dog is like staring at like a house fire that's like inside the same room.
It's a little
It's like the
scary.
lighting is really weird and it looks terrified and
Yeah. So I think probably instead of featuring an image, first of all, you should probably change that image no matter where it's used on your site. But here you can just focus on, here are our most recent blog posts. So just do a column that teases all the blog posts that you've written. So like 3 or 4 of them, and then you could use this and kind of chop this up, maybe edit it down a little bit, use it as a subheading for this section, and then this would be your heading. But as Chase was talking about before, it's a little clever, and which reminds me of my favorite copywriting rule: clarity over cleverness. This doesn't say blog. It's a blog. You just say, check out our blog.
Yeah.
Be clear with people, because this does not. When I saw this, especially in the case of you're going from here to here to here, you think that these are all in line and have similar purpose. That, like, at first we were talking about, like, this is a value, kind of a value, something that would be included in a value section. So is this. Then you assume, okay, here's the third one, but it's not. It's about a blog, but it looks, the way that it's laid out, it looks as though it's the same as these.
Right.
And that's one of those design fundamentals of repetition. One of the foundations of design, repetition, and that things that repeat get lumped together. When they have a similar look, your brain goes, these are the same, or that these have something to do with each other because they repeat each other, or they look the same. But it doesn't. So breaking this section up, doing it in a different way, showing more content. Why hide two other blog posts if you can include them, or 3 other blog posts if you can include them? So, that's what I would do there. All right, the footer. Well, yeah. How about that? So generally, I kind of like what they do, and what they do throughout the site is a lot of these images. If you click these images, or like this one, or these ones down the footer, it goes to their Instagram. Great way to get people to go to your Instagram. People are way less likely to click the Instagram icon. So the way that they've done it, where you click these images, it's way more enticing to click these, because you think, oh, I'll click that and it'll get up big and I'll see that, and I want to see this dog that appears to be wearing a tie, and this dog with this big pink bone. But
yeah, it's almost like you're rewarded for scrolling down to the bottom of the site. You get to see a bunch of cute pet photos, which just makes you want to, sign up for their service. So I think it's actually a really good idea to include those photos in the header.
But what they neglect to do is
in the footer.
Yeah, what they neglect to do in the footer is include links back to other pages. Generally, it's just considered easier navigation. Chase, they have a back to top button.
Oh, what do you know? I love that.
All these sites so far have had back to top buttons, I think.
That's the only ongoing joke that we have, is that I really like back to top buttons. So we're going to keep that gimmick in every video as long as we see it.
You can't see it on the screen capture because I have Chase's block covering it up, but there's a back to that button that'll scroll you back. But
yeah, it's like right here.
Generally speaking, including links in the footer makes it for easier navigation, that somebody wouldn't have to go back to the top. A lot of people may not even understand this little arrow means a back to top button. That's not necessarily the most intuitive button. It almost looks like you click that and then some drawer is going to slide up from underneath and there's going to be something down there. So generally, it's best to keep people in the loop on your website and keep presenting them with more information and more pages that they could explore after they've finished one. You don't want them to finish one page and then go, okay, I guess that's it. So the more that you can get them to interact with the site and see other pages and learn more, the more likely that they are to get started. In this case, get started. But how about where might they be able to put those links to the other pages? Because it's kind of full on here.
I thought you could just put it above the sort of this brown color. You just put it above that, and then there's one thing that we need to discuss, is that the service areas. Right. I think we should probably remove that service area section and just put the Pet Gal family, that section, and just make it wider. Make those photos go all the way to the edge of this contact section.
Yeah.
Then have those photos down there, and then underneath there, I would put the nav links.
Yeah, I think
that'd be a fairly clear way to do it. Or maybe put the nav links above.
You're better off including links to your other pages than I think the service areas. So, for example, Chase and I were talking earlier. Looks like that they have locations here in Texas, Colorado, and Hawaii. So 3 separate states. And they have all of the cities listed here: Colorado Springs, and then that's in Colorado, of course, and then Kona and these Hawaiian places, and then Austin and things in Texas. So what are the chances that I'm in Austin and I found my way to the Austin page on this website, and then I get to the bottom in the footer and I go, oh, I'd really like to check out the Kona, Hawaii one.
You wouldn't.
It's just once you found your location, then you don't need to see the other locations. There's not much use in having that located in the footer on every single page.
Right.
And if this is the way that you need people to find those individual pages, then you probably need to work on your navigation, because you would need to rely on them scrolling all the way to the bottom of the page and then reading through each of these to then discover, oh wait, they have a location in my area. So you're better off just relying on your locations drop down up here, and
Yeah,
maybe.
it's just more organized to click on the location drop down and just have all those links just flooded in the footer.
Yep. So yeah, better off without these and just including more static pages that are more relevant and kind of build trust and educate better. So things like the praise section, which is all their testimonials, and smiles section, which has all the animals that they've taken care of. Things like that are definitely more valuable than listing these locations. Okay, so there's a lot that we could talk about on this website, and if we tried to cover everything on this, this would probably be like a 24-hour marathon video.
There's so many pages.
They have all these pages. They have all these pages. Look at this. Drop down, drop down, drop. And then they have this one, this one, this one, all these. So we're not going to cover all that. And generally,
Yeah.
what I'll say about this is important to keep this in mind with websites. Decision fatigue. If you show people all this stuff, they don't want to sort through all this. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to click all the, how do I find pricing? Where's pricing? Luckily, they put rates there, I guess. But they want the edited down version, the streamlined version of the site, because this is just too much to worry about for somebody. Not everything needs to be linked up here in this nav. So we're not going to talk about all the pages. I think I'd like to just say one thing about these individual services pages and the location pages, and then we'd probably talk about the contact page just briefly. So one piece of just kind of clarification on StoryBrand, which I'll say it again. Maybe we should have said it earlier. I wrote a blog post a few weeks ago. Everything you need on your homepage. I changed the title recently, so now it's like 7 things you need on your homepage and why. But basically summarizing the StoryBrand framework, which is a book by Donald Miller. I always love my visual aids. I always have the book nearby. Great book by Donald Miller that talks about everything that you need on a homepage. But really what it talks about is everything you need on a landing page. So a landing page could be something. So the homepage is a landing page. Basically somewhere that you're pitching something is essentially what a landing page is. You're trying to sell something or explain something or convince somebody of something on a landing page. Homepage is definitely one of those, but then they could have multiple landing pages. So anytime you run an ad campaign, you might have a landing page for whatever your special promotion is, or maybe you have a sale or something like that. You would build a landing page for that. Your services, if you have a page for each individual service like this place does, pet sitting, dog walking, pet taxi, wedding pet attendant, you would follow the same framework that we just laid out on the homepage. You would follow that for each of these services pages we made reference to in the past. Then you could get more specific. So like on that problem section, on that value section, you can be more specific about the benefits of that particular service. You don't have to water it down and be more generic to cover everything. You can be super specific on those pages. So I just wanted to mention that this framework is not necessarily just for home pages as much as it is for landing pages. Homepage can be considered a landing page. Same thing is true with locations. So essentially what they've done here is, so I also like to say that PetGal kind of understands this concept and they do a good job of it. Basically, they're replicating their homepage and the structure of their homepage on each of these pages. They have the homepage and they kind of replicate that for pet sitting and dog walking. And then they do the same thing here for each individual location. You're creating a homepage for Austin, for your business in Austin, by having all these different locations pages. Just some things are changing out. So they change it. They add a new image for Austin or a new map for Austin. They might change a review to somebody that's from Austin or an employee that works in Austin. Here's a review from somebody in Austin. But they just change this information out. And then here it says Austin pet sitting and dog walking. And then if you went to a different, by the way, I don't understand it, but when you go on the locations pages, they get rid of the location from the nav. So I have to go back.
Oh, strange.
So locations and then go to,
Mm.
I'll go to another one. Let's go to Colorado. Oh, see, this is another thing. I hate drop downs. I hate drop downs on websites. These are so hard to use. I've been trying to click this and I keep missing it. See, I just missed it again, and I was trying not to miss it that time. Oh, it just doesn't work actually.
What?
Boom, gone. Okay,
That is not good.
so this is another reason. On top of decision fatigue, this is another reason not to overload your menu to a point where you have a drop down and then a sub drop down within that. It's just way harder to use. So in something like this, locations, you'd be better off just having this be one link. Go to a locations page, and that's what Chase and I were talking about down here. If you really need to display all these locations, don't list them all out like this. Just have a locations page and then include that in the link, like Chase was talking about, having the links listed out below the footer here. Just have a locations page and people can go there and they can click locations. So I would already be on that locations page. I'd be finding a new location right now if that's the way it was set up. And instead, I'm keep going back in, opening up.
You're battling the link.
Here, I'm going to click
the
Kona.
link hover.
Oh, I can't click Kona. All right, Kona, gone. Can't do it. I just have to be quick, I think. Yep, there, got it. If I'm quick, it works. So just don't do drop downs as much as you possibly can, and please do not do it sub drop downs. It's just way too confusing and overwhelming. Okay, anyway, now we're going to Colorado Springs. So basically my point is that they're recreating that same page but just changing information to be local. So now they have an employee from Colorado Springs, they have a map of Colorado Springs rather than Austin, and now they have a new testimonial. So essentially, they're following that same framework. They're not using StoryBrand, but they're using kind of their own framework. However, they've decided to come up with that. But they're replicating that page, making a homepage for each service and a homepage for each location, essentially. Okay, so then the contact page. It's a slow site, by the way. We discovered this site is built in WordPress. Generally, WordPress sites. Well, this could start a whole nother rant.
Yeah. Well, are we at like an hour right now?
I hope. No, we're not quite an hour. We're not quite there. We're actually probably going to end up finishing right about an hour, but
yeah.
It's a WordPress site, so I'll just quickly say something about WordPress sites. The way the WordPress sites is that they're completely dependent on a template, unless you know PHP and all these coding languages and can create a theme by yourself. But by and large, websites in WordPress are created using templates that are sold by someone who makes templates. And when you are selling templates, you need to make that template flexible so that it can work in a variety of different cases. So you might include it with a bunch of cool layouts that you can choose from. You might only use, like, let's say they include like 10 extra little features and layouts and things in that theme, in that template, but you only use 2 of them or 3 of them. All of the code for the other 7 things that you didn't even end up using is still in your website. So what that means is that the files that make up your website tend to be way more bloated and include things that you'll never use or need, and it slows down your site. So generally, you're going to find that WordPress sites are really slow unless you pay for a plugin that can then cache the website and only return the things and minify things so that it only returns what you need. But then you're paying an additional $100, potentially $100 per year to have that caching plugin. It's just it's a big pain, and Chase knows the heartache of a WordPress site. I remember when you first tried to do a WordPress site, and then luckily Chase
so confusing.
Luckily that led Chase to find Webflow, and then introduced it to me, which has made our lives a lot easier when it comes to things like this. So that's why Way to Go website is all Webflow, no WordPress. We're just not gonna deal with the bloat and the waste and the extra money and the bugginess of it. As you can see here, like, this is definitely from a template, and when you go on that locations drop down and it just doesn't work, and then to fix it, it's just a massive pain. So okay, so the contact page, did they just add this? Oh no, they must have now they have a contact page specifically.
The contact page is different than the directory, sort of like the home directory page that we were just on at the beginning of the video. We're on the
Okay.
Colorado section.
Yeah,
So their
that's
contact
interesting.
page is different on the Colorado section, which is really
They
strange.
have a different nav for each thing. That is interesting. Okay, well, that's actually not a bad idea necessarily, especially if you need those contact forms to go to different places to the local
Yeah.
place. That makes sense. But we'll just talk about the main contact form, which should have similar. We should have similar points on that. So again, I wrote actually my second blog post. I'm becoming a bit of a writer lately. Uh, first one was about the homepage and the 7 things that you need on your homepage to align with the StoryBrand framework. And then the next one I wrote was, what should you put on your website's contact page? It's a shorter blog post, and it just kind of gets to the core of what a contact page is all about, which really is questions. That's really the core thing. So the first thing that you want to do, if you know that someone is coming to the contact page specifically because they have some question for you, what you want to do is be able to anticipate what those questions are, because it's going to be faster and easier for you and for them if they can find the answer to their question on your website rather than having to email you or call you about it. Because then it kind of creates that back and forth and that hassle. So Petgal actually does a good job of this by including an FAQs on their contact page. So they say most questions can be answered by visiting our frequently asked questions. For all other inquiries, please choose an option above. So they do a good job of anticipating questions and then also explaining in what situation should they use each of these options. I think that, as I said, the contact page is all about questions. So probably I think that they would be better off doing here, rather than splitting this up by having new client requests, contact us, ask a question, contact us. New client requests is the same thing as that get started button we talked about earlier. So it's their main call to action. They should be repeating this as get started. It's their main call to action. And the
Right.
contact page is all about answering questions. So they should just have the form directly on this page, on the contact page. Don't go to another page to ask a question. You can have the form right here. And then you could include a button, a get started button on this, basically saying, if you have any questions, feel free to fill out the form on this page. But if you're ready to get started on dog walking or pet sitting, click the button below, which could then say get started. And then they would get into the fold there. So that it maintains clarity, because when they have it laid out this new client request, contact us, this makes it feel as though it's a completely different thing than get started, but it's the same thing. So it adds more confusion and makes it feel like there's more roads to go down, and it's much more splintered. So those will be the main criticisms on this particular page. But then, Chase, what do you think about when I click on this contact us button and we go to just the port? This is where you're supposed to go to ask questions. What do you think of having to fill out all of that?
Yeah, I think having to put in your address and your phone number just for asking a question,
Yeah.
it's a little much. And then
Well,
if you scroll up to the top, this is maybe not the most. We kind of briefed over this quickly, that they have like a current clients title, and then they have app portal. I think to most people this would be pretty confusing. And both of those first 2 links I think are down. Yeah, they don't exist. So maybe it's not the best to include that on the site if they
yeah,
don't
it's
exist.
not a good look.
And if you want it, does that mean that you're asking a question through the app?
Right.
Like the title should be more clear as to like what does the app have to do with asking a question.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're gonna have somebody, if you're asking a question should be a really simple process. It doesn't mean that somebody wants to sign up for your service initially. They're just trying to get some info. So dumb this down, make this really simple.
It starts to feel like
Do like
homework with all of this.
just do first name, email, question. It doesn't need to be any more than that, really.
I
You don't
think
need you don't need a title.
you need email just to be able to respond, but it would just be name. You just have name. You don't need company. You don't need title. Name, email, message. Maybe you can throw phone in there if that's like how you work and you need to be able to call them. But
Yeah, maybe.
you don't need email, and then you don't need confirm email. I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt, and maybe it just looks worse now that it's surrounded by all this other stuff. But you definitely don't
Yeah.
need company, and you definitely don't need title. It's just you need to make things easier for people to get into the door, and especially if they're just asking a question and they're not even serious about this. and it depends on the age range of your visitor. But some people don't necessarily understand the red asterisk, meaning required, and they think, oh, I have to fill out my address, and then they're going to fill out everything. So just in the case that somebody goes and they feel like they have to fill out everything, you'd be better off just saying, okay, all you have to fill out is name, email, message. They will fill that out. So, yeah, and then I think the same could be said of their main call to action form is a little bit made a little bit more difficult than it needs to be, in that it's broken up in these steps. So you have to say, okay, I'm interested in pet sitting, and then you go next, and then you have to say your dates, whether you have them or not. So I'll say I don't, and you have to go next. These are just 2 questions. They're getting a little bit complicated with using the slider. You don't need a slider. You can just say how many pets. Just say 1, 2. You just type in a number. I think this can just be simplified into one thing. It just feels like a lot.
It's like you're applying for a bank loan or something. Like it shouldn't be so many steps.
Yeah.
It should just be a really clear form where you sign up for your services. I don't think very many people are clicking on turtle and rabbit to be taken care of as well. Like, it's nice that you have separate boxes, but maybe you just have cat, dog, bird, like the 3 most popular, and then you have an other where you type in your other pet that maybe you want taken care
type
of.
it in, yeah.
More options doesn't mean that it's easier. More options just makes it more annoying and more difficult to navigate.
Yeah. So that I think we can link that contact page article. I actually have it here. Or actually, no, I don't have it here. I have it. I'm gonna scroll to it. Here it is. Here. So we'll link to this where I cover anticipate your visitors' questions, how you're prepared to answer questions, where you kind of funnel people to the method of communication that best suits you and you're most prepared to handle, because you don't want to just throw up a contact form if you're not going to respond to any of them. Why, and explain what the purpose of each method of communication is and what's going to happen, why someone should fill something out, and then after they fill it out, what then happens, because they don't know what's going to happen. So you need to explain these things. There's a great quote from this book. I'll use my visual aid again. People won't walk into a fog. If you don't know, I have it written here. People will not walk into fog. If it's not clear why they should do something or what will happen if they do, they'll back out. So you just need to be clear and communicate with people about why they're filling something out. This is a little bit of a tip on kind of reaffirming confidence in people that they will hear back, because I think a lot of people are used to the experience of going to a website, filling out the contact form, and then they just never hear back. That's definitely the case. Or they think, oh, I'm just going to talk to a bot, or if they have a phone number, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to talk to one of those automated phone things and have to go through all that, and I don't want to deal with it. So including pictures makes it feel more real, and then kind of what we were talking about before in the footer, where you kind of keep people in the loop and you allow them to explore more about you rather than just filling out a form and then leaving. Anyway, all that's covered here with examples, so we'll link that in the footer. Okay, Chase, it's been an hour and 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Wow. We're like
a
a minute and a half within each episode if we decide to end it right now.
They're all the same. Well, I think we should end it because I'm tired. I need to take a nap after all that.
Yeah, there's some stuff we could talk about with graphic design and whatnot, but we can talk about graphic design on any other site. I think the organization of this site was the most important thing to talk about. And it's honestly the most difficult part of a website, I think, is where do you put everything?
Yes. Yeah, so. And most websites are much more straightforward. Like the first 3 that we reviewed, very straightforward and very simple. Like they have kind of one main goal, one main service or product. And that's going to be most websites, but you can see how it can quickly get out of hand, and you can create a lot of headaches for people, a lot of people visiting your website once you start to complicate things a little bit more. So I think this was a good exercise for you and me, Chase, and probably good to have an example of and record and share this. But maybe next website we do, we'll pick a slightly simpler one.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll talk a little bit more so you
Yeah,
don't
I'm sorry.
feel
Yeah.
burnt out by the end.
Well, I hope I didn't. I hope I didn't steamroll anything. I guess I just got amped up.
No, it's fine. Your specialty in sort of creating and organizing sites is a little bit more present on this site than other ones that we've done. So maybe there'll be a site that I'll have pretty good copy but needs a lot of graphic design stuff, and I'll speak a
Yeah,
little more to that.
yeah. I think we already have found maybe a few options that fit that description. So,
Yeah.
um, maybe one quick graphic design thing here is this chase. Is this chase? See, I'm starting to get loopy now. This text and the alignment.
Yeah.
Um, just little simple things. I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot we could say, but
Yeah, if you're gonna have a centered title, you should probably have centered body font
yeah.
in all these sections. It's a little bit confusing to look at and not see that the text isn't centered.
What do you think about this being justified text and then this not being justified text? Do you think that's a
Yeah,
big?
you shouldn't do that.
Okay, yeah.
It just doesn't really work.
It just inconsistency. It looks more sloppy.
I don't I don't like justified text. I don't think it ever really looks good on a website. I think
Rarely,
it's kind of hard to
yeah.
read.
Rarely do I like it. I mean, you need something. Sometimes you do it, and it's like there's these giant gaps. Basically, what justified text is for anybody that doesn't know is it makes the first word of each line start at the same place, and it makes the last word of each line end at the same place. And that means that the spaces have to kind of stretch to make it even, make each line even. And sometimes you end up with spaces that are like this long just to make it so that all the lines are even. It's very, it can look really weird.
It maybe makes sense on a newspaper, which is
Right.
where this spacing kind of comes from, because you have so much text on the page that it might be very difficult. It might be really distracting if you see that some lines
Right.
start at different lengths on the other lines. But on the case of a website, if you're annoyed, because the text isn't justified, well, you just have too much text on your site. You just need to cut down on the amount of sentences. You shouldn't have more than a few lines
Yeah.
in each section.
Yeah. There's, like we said, there's a lot we can talk about with this website. And I think that this was a good example of that.
This is so much. Oh my
So
goodness.
there's plenty that we could have talked about, but we decided to focus on the homepage and services page and locations and the contact page. But in the future, we'll talk more about stuff like this and of course more design too. So okay, good job, Chase. Thank you for going
Good
through
job,
that.
Joe. You spent 90% of the time talking.
Well, what people don't see is that Chase and I are talking before we hit record on this, and we're going back and forth on everything. And I start a sentence and I go, oh, that doesn't work. That wouldn't work. And then Chase is there to contribute great ideas, and then also just tell me when I'm going off base. So, um, okay, I'm done.
I'm done too.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.